Warning! Do not adjust your screen. You are not in fact looking at two of the same car. Now we know that both the Subaru BRZ and Toyota GR86 are very similar, but for 2024, something's changed.
That's right. Each of these respective manufacturers have sort of turned it up a little bit and added a little bit more performance to each of them. No, not necessarily in terms of power, but for both handling and braking, they've made them just a little bit sharper, a little bit better for street and track use.
Now, while you might have seen both of them in our previous affordable sports car comparison brought to you by Weathertech, link down in the description below, today, Jeff and I are going to take them on some really great driving roads to figure out which one is truly better. We'll get you back to that exciting sibling rivalry in a few seconds, but first we're going to take a moment to talk about protecting your own sporty car at home. Weathertech offers complete protection for your vehicle's interior, especially ones like these. When it comes to sports cars, Weathertech offers its classic floor liner for many models. Most work with your OE floor mat clips and protect up to the side of your footwell. And let's not forget the classic cargo liner, which is great for protecting your shiny new sports car from whatever you might need to toss into the trunk. All Weathertech products come with a lifetime guarantee. You can order online at weathertech.ca, shipping is free. Or for those that are local, you can visit the retail showroom at 1164 Walker's Line in Burlington and get your order the same day. For those who are hoping that the GR86 has more power, well, bad news. This special edition is still working with the same 228 horsepower flat 4 as before. But the added displacement and the improvements to the 6-speed manual do make this a much better daily driver overall than that first generation car ever was. The Trueno edition features the new performance pack that is actually standard on this special edition. Now, it features the same Brembo brakes as the Subaru, but like Fleetwood Mac, Toyota goes its own way with unique Sachs dampers. The result is a car that feels well tuned. It's more dialed in for the occasional track duty without punishing you on daily drives. The upgraded brakes are super, with plenty of initial bite and almost zero fade. Pushing both of these coupes through the twisties, unsurprisingly, they're pretty similar, at least initially. The engine really wakes up over 4,000 RPM, and that rev hang more or less disappears. It's those dampers that really set the Toyota apart. Drive these two back to back, and while both of them are very sharp, there's just slightly better body control in the Toyota. Over undulating surfaces, both of them get a little upset, but it's the Toyota that settles itself about a half step sooner. Both of these cars have the same basic proportions because of course they do. The low nose, the tidy overhangs, the pert tail. It's a refreshing look in a sea of increasingly similar looking SUVs and even front drive hatchbacks for that matter. Like most twins, both cars have kind of found their own style over the years. Just remember, the Toyota frowns and the Subaru smiles. For the GR86 Trueno edition, Toyota has given it some super subtle black accents that I'm not entirely sure really works with red versus white, but hey, maybe it does for you. Both Jeff and I agree, however, that the ducktail spoiler does give the advantage to Team Toyota. There's even less difference between these two inside. Both have nicely supportive leather and suede sport seats, but an archaic, simple dashboard design. Although the suede above the digital instrument cluster is a nice touch. If we're going to pick nits, which is kind of the point of this whole face-off, the Toyota's shift topper is cooler. What it lacks in flair, it makes up for in usability, mind you. There's no second guessing how to access anything in the GR86's cabin. The 2+2 layout is admittedly tight, no doubt about it, but it works in a pinch and it allows the car to swallow a surprising amount of stuff if you make use of that pass-through. The Subaru-sourced 8-inch touchscreen isn't exactly the best of the breed either. It's not pretty, and it's not especially quick. It also still needs a USB-A cord just to access Apple CarPlay. But you know what? So does the Subaru, so I guess that makes it a tie for that section. Good news to folks in America. The better driving car is also the better deal. At $35,815, you're saving a few hundred bones compared to the Subaru. That's if you can find one, mind you. There's just 860 Truenos coming for 2024. It's even tougher in Canada, where just 50 examples of this model will show up for a McNugget combo more than $41,000 all in.
When you've got two cars that are rolling off the same assembly line, it stands to reason that they're extremely similar. And that's certainly the case here. The powertrains between the two are basically inconsequential, the differences. They both have enough power, 228 horsepower, which is, adequate for a car that only weighs 2,800 pounds, and they go along pretty well. The only aggravation is that if you're at moderate revs driving around town, it tends to have a lot of rev hang, and that makes the shifts really kind of sloppy. If you rev it out a lot more in the higher ranges of the tachometer, it's no issue. It seems to smooth out quite nicely, and that's something that applies to both cars. Where the differences lie between these two happens to be more with the suspension setups. Now, Subaru has added a set of Hitachi Astemo front dampers and done some mild tweaking to the rear end as well. The net result is a car that just wants to turn in a little bit more eagerly, and it's got good, crisp handling feel to it. When comparing the two back to back, however, we noticed that the Subaru does tend to become just slightly unsettled if it's trying to do too much at once. If you're coming into a corner and the pavement's kind of rough, or if you're trying to brake a little bit longer as you come into it, it can be just slightly less buttoned down than what the Toyota's is. That said, you have to drive them back to ever pick up on it, and honestly, they are so extremely similar that most people would probably never know the difference. I admit that I prefer the front end of the Toyota and its little ducktail, but other than that, this is the car that does it for me. The beautiful blue paint is absolutely radiant in the sun. I love the little gold accent of the Brembo brakes, and it just feels like it's the more sophisticated choice out of these two. As for the BRZ's interior, everything that Kyle said, except blue. The Subaru BRZ starts at $31,300, and then for this TS trim, it's $36,465, which in the States means it is the more expensive option of the two. But in Canada, it's a screaming deal. Starting at $33,900, and then for this TS trim at $38,300, it ends up being several $1,000s cheaper than the Toyota. So after driving these two extensively on some fantastic roads and some great weather, we still prefer the Toyota just a little bit.
It's true, but in that original 4-car comparison, it was the Subaru BRZ that actually won because its pricing in Canada gave it a slight edge. However, if you're watching in the US, this is both more affordable and better to drive, and thus it is the clear winner here.